Chapter 13. Over our late lunch, I decide to ask Uncle Joseph the question that had plagued me last night. Uncle Joseph, I don't get it. Evelyn and I prayed the rosary last Friday, asking that we find another bead. Within a minute, the phone rang, and it was that old guy, Roger Billings, and he had found 3 beads, right? Then on Sunday, Aunt Mary Ellen and I prayed the rosary for Mom, but she was actually worse the next day. And now look what's happened. Evelyn and I prayed again the other night to find more beads, and a lady called. But she really wasn't any help at all. She just said that she gave it to her drug-addicted brother, and hasn't talked to him since. So what I don't get is, why would God answer that first prayer, but not the others? If the rosary really works, and if prayer really works, why isn't it working now? Uncle Joseph folds his hands on the table in front of him. He takes so long to answer, I begin to figure that there is no good answer, and I'm just going to be disappointed. Well, Kate, we can only see a tiny slice of our lives, but God sees it all. He knows everything. So what you pray for, the things you might want or think you need, sometimes they aren't in sync with God's will for your life. Very often he has something better for you. My expression turns doubtful. Somehow my mom going to the psych ward doesn't feel like something better. I know it's hard to understand. We know that God loves us. He doesn't want bad things to happen to us, but he allows them because he has given us all free will. Because God is all good, and because he loves us, he will always bring good things out of what's bad. Our job then, so to speak, is to trust God, to recognize the good, and to look for the ways that we can cooperate with God's plan for us. Aunt Mary Ellen chimes in. You know, I can already see some good things coming from all of this. You've made this connection with the Blessed Mother now, and that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been so upset over what was going on. I nod my head slowly, and Aunt Mary Ellen continues. Maybe your mom just needed to get to a point where she actually had to seek help, you know? She looks at Uncle Joseph, and he nods his head in agreement. Maybe her getting help and checking into a hospital is the best way for her to get well again. Maybe, now she's on a roll, it's good for us, me, you, and Joseph, to have this time together, which we wouldn't be doing if everything was okay, right? I nod again, but I know that I'm not hiding my doubt very well. Aunt Mary Ellen sits back in her chair and gives a short laugh. You know, we were all given a cross on the day that Mom died. Sometimes I hate that cross and wish that we didn't have to bear it. But when I think about that cross, I thank God for the grace he has given me to get through it, that I can see how it has made me stronger and helped me to grow closer to Jesus and to Mary. She pauses and looks at me searchingly. Am I making any sense? I shake my head and she laughs. Well, thanks for your honesty, she says, and looks at Uncle Joseph. He takes the lead, but his words are really no help. Take some time to think about it, Kate, and pray about it too. God can bring a blessing out of every difficulty. God is the only one who can do that. Look for the blessings you can find, even in this situation. I have other questions I'd like to ask, but my mind's reeling from all that they've said, so I decide to wait until another time. Aunt Mary Ellen must sense that I've had all I can handle. She changes the subject and starts asking me about school and the next play I'll audition for, and asks Uncle Joseph about the incoming students at the local college seminary, where he's the rector. We finish up our meal and return to the car after saying our goodbyes to Uncle Joseph. I'm amazed by how much better I feel now than I did this morning, and then realize that there's something I need to do. Aunt Mary Ellen? I ask. Yes, she responds as she maneuvers the car into traffic. Could you take me by Evelyn's house? I need to apologize to her. I was pretty awful this morning. Aunt Mary Ellen glances away from the road to give me an understanding look, and she pats my knee. Sure, hon, I can do that. 5 minutes later, we arrive at Evelyn's. I take a deep breath before opening the car door. I can walk home from here, I say. Aunt Mary Ellen smiles and nods her head, as if she understands that I'll need the time alone. I'll call your dad and let him know, she says. I return her smile nervously, glad that she has thought of calling him. Oddly, it hadn't even crossed my mind that Dad might worry about me if I don't get home soon. Then I brace myself, walk to the back door, and give a tentative knock. Evelyn answers the door, her expression unreadable. She steps back and motions me in. I walk into the kitchen, grateful to see that, for once, her mom isn't busy cooking there. I pick a spot at the granite countertop, not sure of what to say. And finally I manage to squeak out, I'm sorry. It's okay. Your dad called my mom, so I know what's going on. But I'm not sure why you took it out on me, she says. I can hardly blame her for not letting me off that easily. I don't know, I say honestly. I just didn't want to talk about it. Definitely not at school. And I guess the easiest thing to do was to make you mad at me, so you'd stop asking questions. I scuff my foot on the wood floor. I'm sorry, I say again, stealing a glance away from my fingers and toward my cousin. I forgive you, Kate, she says, and then gives me a much-needed hug. Then she puts me out at arm's length and a smile lights her face. And I've got news. Seeing the sparkle in her eyes, I know it must be news of a bead. What? What is it? I ask excitedly. Beth called while we were at school. I had a message when I got home. I didn't call her back because, well, I thought I should wait for you. I squeal, grab her by the arms, and we dance around in circles for a moment in the excitement. Then she grabs my hand and pulls me toward the phone in the kitchen. Here's her number, she says, handing me a sticky note. I stare dumbly at it until she says, Come on, what are you waiting for? I grab the phone, press in the number, and wait for an answer. Hi, Beth, it's Caitlin Roberts. You called and left a message earlier today? Oh, yes. I'm sorry I didn't call back sooner. I heard from my brother on Sunday. The day after we spoke, actually. I went and saw him on Wednesday. I still can't believe it, but he finally did it. James went through rehab and just completed his recovery program last week. He looks amazing. Beth pauses, and I realize that my mouth is hanging wide open. Evelyn, once again, has her head glued to mine so that she can hear what Beth is saying. She squeezes my hand and bounces up and down, but doesn't move her head, afraid to miss something. Caitlin, I told James that you were looking for the beads, and actually, he'd like to meet you. He seems to think that the bead I gave him played some sort of role in his recovery. Really? I squeak. Evelyn finally tears her head away from mine and looks at me with huge eyes. Yes, she answers. I understand if you're not comfortable, and I'd go with you and your parents, of course. James really is a great person, when he's sober. I swallowed hard at the mention of my parents. Let me check with my dad. I'd like to meet him, too. I think my cousin Evelyn will probably want to go, if that's okay. My heart is racing, and my palms are a little sweaty. Beth assures me that Evelyn would be welcome, and I tell her that I'll call her back once we've asked our parents. Evelyn runs right away and asks her mom, who's a little bit worried about us meeting a recently recovered drug addict. I suspect my dad will feel the same way, but Evelyn comes up with a perfect argument. Mom, we've gone and helped Beggars for the Poor hand out food to homeless people, and we served the homeless at St. Vincent de Paul's Center. I thought you wanted us to see how other people live. Ding, ding, ding! She hit the nail on the head, and Susan gives Evelyn a long look, then says, You're right, Evelyn. It's important for us to meet people with all kinds of different life experience. I'll plan to go with you. I'll need to talk it over with your dad, but I think it should be fine. Evelyn throws her arms around Mom's neck. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Then she turns to me and says, Okay, now for your dad. I think he'll say yes. He'll see it the same way your mom did, I assure her. I realize that with everything that's happened today, calling right now to ask the question probably isn't the best idea. I'd better head home. I need to see how Mom's doing and help fix dinner. I'll ask him later and call you, okay? No need to worry about dinner, hon, Aunt Susan says. I've got something in the oven to bring over for you guys. I can give you a ride home when it's done, okay? It should just be about 30 minutes or so. What a relief. A night without worrying about dinner. I thank Aunt Susan, but tell her I'd actually like to walk home, if that's all right. I could still use that time alone. With hugs to both Aunt Susan and Evelyn, I head for home in the bright afternoon sunshine. As I walk, I feel an unfamiliar bulk in my pocket and realize I've still got Uncle Joseph's rosary. I suddenly start wondering if I should pray it again, even though I've already prayed once today. Remembering how calm I felt earlier, I decide to follow the inspiration and make the sign of the cross. This is the first time I've ever prayed a rosary by myself, and I can't remember all of the mysteries. I fumble through, though, and when all else fails, summon memories of the image that I had earlier in the afternoon. This time it isn't so scary. I think about how Mary must have felt watching her son go through such terrible abuse, and how it feels for me to watch my mom go through so much. I finish when I'm a block away from my house. I don't remember the final prayers, the one that starts with Hail Holy Queen, or the last one where you say straight to God, Oh my God, and then something or other. But I figure God and Mary and Jesus will be happy to have heard from me twice in one day, even if I didn't do it perfectly. As I near the house, that wonderful calm settles on me again, and when I walk through that back door, I say a little prayer that all will go well with my family. Dad hears me open the door and comes to the kitchen to greet me. He folds me into a hug. Hey, sweetie. Sounds like you had a rough day. Yeah, but I'm okay now. Aunt Mary Ellen was really cool, and Uncle Joseph was there too. Good. I'm sorry I couldn't come get you, but... He leaves the sentence hanging, not wanting to say the words. I know, Dad. It's okay. Mom needed you. Aunt Mary Ellen and Uncle Joseph were really good substitutes, I assure him. How's Mom doing? She's good. Well, as good as can be expected. The facility is really nice, and the people are very kind. They'll take good care of her. I manage a smile. Good. That's good to hear. Dad gives me another hug. So what did you do with your aunt and uncle that left you feeling so much better? I feel a little awkward telling him, so I don't go into a whole lot of detail. Actually, we stopped at St. Joan of Arc to pray, and then we went down to the food emporium, because I really didn't eat any lunch, and I was starving. We talked about... stuff, I finish awkwardly. Well, good. I'm glad you got a chance to talk. Mary Ellen and your mom always used to be so close, and I'm sure Joseph had some great insights and advice. I nod my head. If only he knew. But I'm pretty sure he'd look at me as if I had grown another nose if I started telling him that Mary is my second mom. Some things just seem better left unsaid, I guess. Maybe I'll tell him more someday. Dad? I query tentatively. Yes, hon? Well, Evelyn got a call from a woman we talked to on Monday. She found one of the beads a while back. It had her brother's initials on it, JCL. So she gave it to him. He was homeless and addicted to drugs. When we talked to her on Monday, she hadn't heard from him since she gave him the bead. But she called today to tell us that he contacted her on Tuesday and that he's gone through a recovery program and now he's sober. I continue on in a rush. He wants to meet us. He thinks the bead had something to do with getting clean, and well, you know how it's good for us to meet people with different backgrounds and life experiences and all. What? Dad asks, looking rather blindsided. Well, I was hoping maybe we could go see him, I finish, looking up at him with my sweetest begging eyes. Well, you and Evelyn are most certainly not going by yourselves. No, of course not. Aunt Susan has already said that she'll go with us, and you can come too if you want to. Kate, with your mom being gone, I'm overwhelmed. I hate to leave Gwen and Paul here alone, so it's not that easy. And I think bringing them along would be a bit much. When were you thinking of going? I don't know. I'd like to go soon. This weekend, maybe? I guess it's okay for you to go, but I'd really like to go with you. I can see Dad's overprotective man side coming to the surface. Clearly, he doesn't feel that Aunt Susan is enough to protect us from a potentially unstable, formerly homeless drug addict. I suppose he's got a point. Fortunately, I'd already thought about this. What if Gwen could go to Aunt Susan and Uncle David's and hang out with Ava, and Paul could go to Aunt Mary Ellen's and play with Daniel? I suggest hopefully. That might work. We can ask Aunt Susan when she delivers dinner here shortly. Would you mind calling your Aunt Mary Ellen to ask about Paul? I've got some work I really need to catch up on, since I wasn't in the office today. Yes, I will. I take off running for the phone, then realize I've forgotten something. I run back to Dad, throw my arms around his neck, and give him a huge hug. Thank you so much, Daddy. He returns my hug in his warm, crushing Dad way. I relax into him before peeling away to complete our arrangements. Half an hour later, I've talked to both my aunts and Beth, and the plans are all set. Tomorrow afternoon, we will meet James, the potentially unstable, formerly homeless drug addict, at a coffee shop downtown. I can't wait.